Alrighty, folks, here we are, Friday Fuel holiday edition. So we are on Black Friday, and for those of you that celebrated, hope you had an awesome one. I had a pretty low-key one with my girls. Very enjoyable. It was a great day. Yesterday we got outside, ran around, got to play on the swing set in the backyard for the first time here in the new house. I'm excited because the backyard is pretty big. We live in a cul-de-sac, and so we live at the very end of it, and so our backyard kind of spans out like this. So it's super long, and it's deep too. So, I mean, you can have a kickball game in the backyard, which I'm really excited about all the activities that we're going to be doing here in the future. As my girls grow up older, we're going to be running all over the place back there. So that's going to be fun. But other than that, I kept it pretty under control from an eating standpoint versus traditionally what I do. I'll have usually the fixins, turkey, stuffing. My wife makes this freaking bomb sweet potato, like casserole type thing. So it's got sweet potatoes in it, got some spices, got bacon bits in it. It's just unbelievable. My mom always brings this strawberry salad, which is it's like cream cheese, chopped up strawberries, and then on the top, there's she browns these pretzel sticks with butter and sugar and puts that on top of it, and it's just unbelievable. And then there's a local bakery. Well, it's like a home cooking restaurant in town here in Omaha called The Farmhouse. And actually, the guy that owns it was one of my first clients that I ever had when I first started training. And so I used to go there, eat all the time, and it's been a tradition to get pies from him. And they got like the best freaking pies, just homemade from scratch. Unbelievable. So we usually get a chocolate, a pumpkin, a pecan, a strawberry, a caramel apple, and then gosh, what else do we always get? That's typically what we always get from there. And so I'll have like a slice of each and every pie because I just can't choose one. So I always do that on Thanksgiving. But actually yesterday, it was just me and my girls. No other family came by. My parents came by last weekend. And so, yeah, it was real low-key. Still had some good food. My wife still made a bunch of food, and we just had a big kind of late lunch, and then of course I finished off the potatoes and everything like that for dinner. And no slices of pie actually for me this year, which was a surprise. And I actually felt pretty good today in my training. I wasn't super inflamed. I was well fueled, but not super inflamed. And so either way, this week we're going to get into a little Q&A. So I posted up in the Facebook group question. I posted up in there to see what questions we had, and we actually got a good response. And then I got some questions sent back to me personally, and I'm just going to run right through these. And so the first one was how to lose weight and not muscle. How to lose weight and not muscle. And so a couple different things that we have to think about with this here. And so this is where quantity becomes key, right? And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here with you guys so you can kind of see what I'm chatting about here. But lose weight. This is like the holy grail, right? Like everybody wants to lose weight, but not muscle, right? So it's a delicate balance, right? And before I got into the whole, macro side of things, like when I was younger, I could easily do this. I could easily shred fat and, kind of build muscle at the same time. But that's actually not what's happening. You're actually losing weight, but maintaining muscle, right? And so when you're in a good state of health, your metabolism is very, very good. It's running very efficiently and everything's working optimally. Then you can get away with just eating less. And typically you'll just shred away the pounds just as long as you're taking in enough protein. So the big thing here is, number one, we're looking at the main goal here. It's to lose weight. So that means we have to be in a deficit. We have to be in a deficit energy-wise, right? So total calories need to be less than what we're burning off, right? And so this is where knowing your quantity is key. And so if we know, let's say your BMR, your basal metabolic rate, which means this is how many calories you burn just at rest, let's say we know is 2,000 calories, right? Then we'd want to fuel ourselves around like 1,800 to 1,500 calories to be in a deficit, right? So I'll just put a little red sign there so you guys understand what I'm talking about. But we need to be in a deficit, and so that would bring us in a deficit. Now, this is where like partitioning your macros is key. And so if we're looking to lose weight specifically, the number one thing, the other thing that's going to really play a role in this is we need to make sure that we have an optimal enough amount of protein, right? And so if we're not properly taking in the right amount of protein, like our body will start to go to its muscle stores and use our muscle stores as energy, versus if we're taking in enough amount of protein, it's kind of shielding our muscles, so to speak. And then that way we'll go to our fat stores for energy. But with this being said, we want to deplete our glycogen stores as much as possible, but we have to strategically replenish our glycogen stores at specific times. And so post-workout, ideally, is when we're taking in carbs again. And so protein, and this might look familiar, Big 5-4, right? So Big 5-4 states we need to have protein in every single meal. And ideally, we're taking in at least 0.8 grams per pound of body weight. But when we're kind of in a fat loss mode and we don't want to lose muscle, I usually go up to 1 gram, if not 1.2 grams per pound of body weight, just as a general rule of thumb, because now we're shifting our macronutrients over just a little bit more, right? And so going into like strategically taking in glycogen, your carbs may be lower, they may be higher. It all depends on you. Like there isn't a one-all be-all answer here. Like, hey, here's the perfect amount of intake for anybody. That like it just doesn't work that way. Like we need to know where you're at specifically so we can properly adjust your intake, right? But what we do is we strategically make sure our glycogen is down. And so I usually say is carbs at end of day, or only during post-workout. Those would be the only 2 times that you take in carbohydrates. The rest of the day, you're taking in, obviously, protein, and then you're taking in healthy fats. Another thing I would suggest you do, lose weight, not muscle. BCAAs, like supplement with BCAAs, definitely when you're training, because again, in order to lose weight, lose body fat, like we have to be in a deficit, right? So if you're training and your body's in a deficit and you've been doing it for a while, we want to make sure that we're protecting those muscles, because again, like your muscles are precious. We don't want to lose muscle mass, or else you're going to drop in metabolism and you're going to go in the wrong direction. So we want to do everything we can to maintain muscle, right? And so a couple other things. Lift heavy, often. Why do we lift heavy? Strength and muscle maintenance. So you lift heavy because when you lift heavy, you spark your body into saying to itself, holy shit, we're lifting heavy. We got a heavy stimulus. I need to keep these muscles around, right? And so when you're just lifting light, like everybody thinks, oh, I want to lose weight. I need to go after the burn, yada, yada, yada. Like, yeah, you're going to burn calories, but you're also going to give your body a reason to get rid of muscle. So if you're not lifting heavy, you're not stimulating the body to actually hold on to the muscle that it has, then it'll kind of switch gears and it'll get rid of it. Perfect case in point, look at a marathon runner or people that just do a shit ton of cardio. Despite being in the deficit, they lose weight, but they also lose muscle mass because they're not giving their body a reason to actually hold on to that muscle, right? And so that's one thing. If you're going to condition Metcons, you're going to want to drop down probably 1-2 times a week, again, depending on who you are. And then you're going to focus more on aerobic type conditioning, ideally in a fasted state. I mean, they've done research on saying it's way more efficient. They've done research. I've seen guys post stuff up. It's like, oh, doing fasted cardio has no benefits to it. I've seen data on both sides. I've used it. I've got a lot of my clients using this right now. We actually have a strategic setup inside Forge Father that we do on our off days where we'll do aerobic-based active recovery work. But to get the body primed for fat burning, we'll do this first thing in the morning. And so you'll do some sort of HIIT, just short, high-intensity interval training, just for like 2, maximum of like 5 minutes, just to get the heart rate up. But there's a couple different things that you do when you do this. So you actually trigger the body to release fat into the bloodstream, right? And so now you've triggered your body to do that. Now you get it back into an aerobic state where you can only use fat as fuel in an aerobic state. And so when you're doing Metcons and high-intensity interval type training and things like that, you're actually not using fat as fuel then. You're using glucose, glycogen, right? You're using carbohydrates. That's why if you're a high-level performance type athlete and you're trying to improve your performance and push harder, you got to fuel yourself with carbohydrates. Like keto, it just doesn't work. Like you're going to hit a wall at some point. Even if your body has switched over to burning fat as fuel, like you will never fuel yourself for performance. Like I see keto people saying, oh, I've never felt better. It's like, well, try doing multiple Metcons and, training like a CrossFit athlete basically, and you're not going to see much return for your effort, right? But either way, you need to be in an aerobic state in order to burn fat as fuel. And so basically what you do is you spike your heart rate 4 to 5 minutes, and then you do like a 20-minute just light aerobic type activity, whether that be a walk, bike ride. You can do some assault bike work, skier, rowing, just at a nice conversational type pace. And you go through that, take BCAAs when you do that, and then that would be like your off day, right? Or you can choose to do that in the mornings. In fact, I used to do this when I was getting ready for my bodybuilding show. When my calories started to get very, very low, my carbs were close to non-existent at that point. I would do 5 rounds on the treadmill, all-out sprint for about 15 seconds, and then I'd walk 45 seconds. I'd do that 5 rounds, just high-intensity intervals, and then I would go ahead and just walk for like 30 minutes, right? That was years ago. It sucked ass, but there's other ways that you're basically just trying to burn more calories at a lesser intensity, because if you're always trying to push the intensity at a high level and you're in a deficit, you're just going to ask for problems, right? And so there's a delicate balance, right? And so if your goal is to lose weight, not muscle, understand performance is going to drop, right? Like you're probably going to start getting a little bit weaker in your lifts and whatnot, but this is a totally different goal. Like fueling yourself for performance versus, weight loss. You have to understand there's a balance there. Like you need to be fueling yourself completely different, right? But what makes this process so easy? Guess what? Knowing your quantity. So if you're tracking your intake, and I could take a look at your quantity and I could say, okay, here's where we're at right now. This is what you're trying to do. We're trying to lose weight, not muscle. Now we can start to tweak your numbers specifically. If not, you're just guessing, right? You're just guessing like, oh, I'll just eat more protein and eat less carbohydrates. Like that's not guaranteeing you that you're going to get results, right? And so that was a good question. Hope that makes sense. Next one's a very easy one. Is bacon protein? Bacon is absolutely protein, but it's also a fat. All right, and so this brings up something important that I'll hit on here: macros. Because as a coach, this is something that I think about, but it's not something that I think about a lot. Like, I obviously know, working with people and their macros for a long time, I know like different sources of macros. So I know pure protein sources. So you got protein sources over here that are lean. So bacon wouldn't be a lean protein source. Then you got protein sources over here that are fatty. And then you got these over here. So you got carbs that are non-starchy. Then you got carbs, starchy, right? And so oftentimes people get this stuff mixed up. And so they think like white rice. Okay, white rice is a carbohydrate. Cool. I can have it whenever because Travis said non-starchy carbs at this meal or whatever. No, that's not the case. Like, there's a difference, right? And so carbs that are non-starchy are going to have a different effect on your insulin, right? And so they're not going to cause a boost in insulin because the carbs are usually very, very trace amount of carbs, but also there's more fiber in these types of carbs. So the fiber content in these carbs causes the carbs to be digested slower, right? And so the slower something digests in the body, the less insulin response that we're going to have, right? And so that goes along the lines with like controlling your insulin. If you can control your insulin over the course of the day, you'll have a better handle on your energy, and you'll have a better handle on your actual body fat composition, right? Because the better we have control of our insulin, it's just the better as a whole. But if you think about it, like lean protein sources, so like turkey, lean cuts of turkey, right? So we got lean beef. Fish, there's different fish, and these are things that you got to check out. So like salmon oftentimes has a little bit higher fatty content, whereas like tuna, you can get tuna, it's just all protein, right? And so you just got to make sure the type of fish that you're taking in, right? Chicken, same thing. Chicken thigh is going to be more of a fattier protein because we're going to have protein and fats, whereas like chicken breast is just going to be straight up like lean protein. Egg whites. We got, what else? Turkey, lean beef, fish, chicken. We got like whey powders. And there's tons and tons of other selections. But we get over to the fattier proteins. Now we're looking at like beef. Anything that's 90% or below, I would say is pretty fatty. So if you're getting 90-10, you're still getting quite a bit of fat in there when you look at it, right? Like 80-20, 75-15, or 75-25. Oftentimes when you go to a restaurant and say you order something like a turkey burger or something like that, just because you're getting a turkey burger doesn't mean it's a healthier choice, right? Because they're using very fatty meat. Same thing with like burgers. Like burgers, most restaurants, they use 75-25 because it's cheaper. It's way cheaper. And so that's what makes those burgers like at bars and stuff like that so high in fat content. They're using lower quality meat. But we got whole eggs. We got bacon. Bacon is definitely going to be one of the fatty proteins. Over here, I would throw in like pork loin. But then we think bacon, that's a fattier cut. What else do we got? We got pork belly. Pork belly is unbelievable, but you'd have to throw that under fattier cuts. Another one that I love, but you got to be mindful of the amount of fat that you're taking in with it is like bison. But then we also have fish over here too. So note the difference, right? And so if you're somebody and you're not tracking your intake and you're like taking in a lot of these fattier proteins here, like more than likely you're blowing your fats way out of the water, like thinking, oh, I'm taking in a lot of protein. I'm eating, 87-13 beef. It's like, yeah, you're getting in a lot of fat too. So you got to be mindful of that stuff. Like not all proteins are created equal, right? And so things to think about. Now, same thing over on the starchier carbs. So we got higher fiber content. So we got all your greens. So like leafy greens. You got your broccoli, cauliflower, different things like that. You got like your peppers. Man, you could look at some of the like tuber vegetables. Some of those have lower, like your I can't think of it. Squash. So squash is awesome. If you're on a lower carb setup, like squash is awesome. It's going to give you that starchy type of taste, but it's not going to blow your carbohydrates out of the water, right? And so a lot of times we can eat higher amounts of volume with these foods. We'll throw pickles in there, cucumbers, right? We can eat higher amounts of these foods and get away with like trace amounts of like macros, right? Now over on the starchier carb, we got things like rice, potatoes, quinoa is another one that I love. But that's where we're at. Then we got our carbs, sugars, like sugar carbs, right? So these are going to be your fruits, berries, melons, apples, oranges, all those types of things, right? And so you got all these different areas. If we were to throw fats in here, so you got more of your plainer fats, so lower carbs. So like you can call them non-starchy fats basically, but like your oils, avocados. But then you're going to have your fats that have carbs in them. They're primarily a fat source, but they're going to give you a trace amount of carbohydrates too, and a little bit of protein. But beans are usually higher in, you're getting fat, but you're also getting carbohydrates, like starchier type carbs. And then you got your fats that are still a fat source, but it's funny, when people first start tracking their intake, I'll be like, hey, what are your main protein sources that you're taking in? And they'll say, oh, I'm eating a lot of almonds and pumpkin seeds and peanuts and stuff like that. It's like, whoa. You're going to blow your fats out of the water if you're using that as a main protein source. And so you got to think like nuts and seeds. Those are not primary protein sources. Those are fat sources. So when you flip the script there and you look at those as fat sources, like now that's not your number one go-to for protein. Like you need to look up here for your number one go-tos with protein, right? But again, if you're not tracking your intake or anything like that, just eat a steady mix. And if you're not getting the results that you want, then consider, tracking your macros. That was the next question that I got, tracking macros but not losing weight, okay? And so just because you are tracking your macros doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to lose weight. So let me go into this real quick. And so, okay, you're over here, you're tracking your macros, cool. Oops. So you're over here, you're tracking your macros, and you're doing that through MyFitnessPal, right? MyFitnessPal gives you generic numbers, right? They say, oh, you're X amount of weight, you're X amount of age, this is your activity level. Okay, cool. here's your numbers. And I'm just going to throw some weird numbers out there. So you're tracking your intake, and then you just get your numbers from MyFitnessPal right away. Those are the numbers that they give you. And so you start hitting those numbers and no results, right? And so here's what you got to understand about that. So before you got those numbers, we were up here, okay? So if you can picture this, you were up here and you had a certain intake, right? Whatever that intake might have been, we don't know. And so what we need to take into consideration here is your actual intake before you even considered looking at this, because who knows? You might have been here. Like a lot of people, I'll say 9 out of 10 people are typically so well underfed before they start tracking their intake. Like, we need to start at a lower amount. Well, MyFitnessPal, super generic. It's just going to give you a number that, you know, it's just spitting out. It's not taking this into consideration. So if you look at this, there's a huge difference. And so if you start hitting these macros right away, you know, versus what you were doing before, yeah, more than likely you're not going to lose weight. You're actually going to gain weight, right? And you're not going to be too happy about it. And then you're going to create this story in your head like, oh, this macro tracking stuff is bullshit. It doesn't work. It's like, no, you just didn't use it properly, right? And so instead, the way to do this, if you're tracking your macros, you need to figure out where you were at prior, right? Like, don't set a specific set of targets before you've gotten consistent. I usually say 10 to 14 days of data. Okay, so you're tracking your macros, right? You do that for 10 to 14 days, and then let's say these are your numbers. I'll just throw these numbers out there. Let's say that over the course of that 10 to 14 days, your average intake was right here, right? And so based off of those numbers, now we have a set of baseline target, like baseline data. That's point A, right? Okay, let's say that we want to lose weight, and for you specifically, I do calculations. I figure out where you're supposed to be. I use a specific formula that I've used for years now, but that's not to say those are the numbers that we're going to use for you. Because get this. Let's say we find this out. I'll just throw some generic numbers out here. For you specifically, let's say these are the numbers that we come up with based off of from the formula I use. We'll look at the difference from A to B. You're going to go from 150 grams of protein a day up to 200. The biggest jump that you're going to make is right now you're taking 200 and you're going to jump up to 350. Oh, we're going to drop our fats down by 10, but that's a major difference. That's a huge change in intake just overnight based off of a simple calculation, right? And so the critical thing to do here is meet in the middle. This is where we create a point C. We forget about these numbers really because that was just like to use as reference, and we kind of meet in the middle. So what I would say is we bump up just a little bit. We can actually drop those. And so those would be your more accurate based off of where you're at currently right now. These would be your more accurate macros to start at right there. Then it's all about playing the consistency game. You got to be consistent, and we got to slowly build ourselves up from there. And so you take these numbers, you run with it, right? And so to answer that question, if we're tracking macros but not losing weight, that's what I'd look at. I would forget about hitting any targets. Just eat as you normally eat. Figure out what your 10 to 14 days tracking is going to come out to be, like what your averages are. And then that's going to give you a better idea of like where you're at. And then we can start moving you ahead from there. Another question, if hitting macros, what's more important to hit, protein or carbs? Well, if you have a specific set of numbers, what's more important to hit? I would say protein. Like, protein is the number one priority. But here's the thing. If you have a set of macros, like, those are your numbers. They were figured out for you. So hit them all. Like, hit them all. If you're not hitting them, then you're not hitting your specific numbers, right? So you might as well not even have targets. And so it takes time. It takes time to get down. But once you get it down, you'll start hitting your numbers more consistently, and you just build that up. You run with that consistency. It gets easier. It becomes a skill set for you, and you just get good at doing it. There's a lot of different tips and tricks that we can use to do that. Pre-tracking is by far the biggest one to hit your macros. And that was actually the next question: how to hit my macros better. And so if you've been doing it, and a lot of times, like, let's just use this for example. So let's say, like, one day we were here, we blew up our fats, and then the next day we're spot on proteins, but you went way over on carbohydrates, and then we're way under on fats, and then this day, whatever. So we're kind of all over the place. And so, like I was telling you, pre-tracking is like fail-safe, right? And so if you use MyFitnessPal, again, if we know these are the numbers that we need to hit, right? First thing I'd recommend is you get into MyFitnessPal, buy their premium upgrade, because when you do their premium upgrade, you can switch your goals to grams. What they give you right now is like percentages. So you can still go off that. It's just you don't have your goals right there in your face. Like, you can still see where you're at on a daily basis with your profile. If you go to the nutrition tab, like the nutrition tab for the day, it'll pull up like what your totals are, and then you'll see your grams right there. But if you're going off percentage, it kind of throws you off. You should run off percentage. It's always going to be off of grams when it's specific to you, unless you somehow perfectly match up with like a certain percentage that MyFitnessPal gives you. But either way, you want to be running off of grams. And so when you know this number, it's like, that's the bullseye. We know the bullseye, right? And so the way you pre-track here, I'll just erase some of this stuff. This is what I do. And so I have breakfast. I don't track it yet. And then I'll have post-workout. And then I'll have lunch. And then after my lunch, this is when I pre-track right here. So I look back at all 3 meals, and I enter them into MyFitnessPal. And so at that point, boom, proteins. So it gives me protein, carbs, and fats for breakfast, protein, carbs, and fats for lunch, protein, carbs, fats, for all that stuff. And then it gives me a total. You can look into your MyFitnessPal, and it's like, okay, at this point, you've used up 97 grams of protein. You've used up, 178 grams of carbs, and your fats, you've already used up 75. And so at this point, before you've even had dinner, this is where you're at compared to here. These are your targets. You can't go over these targets. You need to hit these targets. This is where it becomes like a human game, or a fuel game of Tetris, so to speak. So you're like trying to fit the bits and pieces into place so we perfectly hit it. And so when you first start using this, it might take a little bit more time to get it down, and you're trying to adjust things. It's like, that didn't work. But if you look back at what I just talked about, like with the macro sources, that's when it's a skill set for you to have to know, like, okay, if you're almost over your fats for the day, like we can only hit 90 and we're already at 75. I know for my next meals, I have to select very lean sources of protein and very lean sources of starchy carbs. Like, I can't be eating any nuts or seeds or oils or anything like that, because those are going to blow my fats up. Like, if I wanted to have beef for dinner or something like that, not going to happen, because I'm going to probably blow up my fats. You might be able to fit it in, but you'll never know. And so what you do is, before you eat dinner, you take out MyFitnessPal, and it's like, okay, let's have some fun here. I want to eat 8-ounce filet with, a 6-ounce potato, and, I want to have a little bit of butter on there. So you put it all into MyFitnessPal. It's going to give you your proteins, carbs, and fats. You enter it as if you already ate it, and then you check your totals for the day. Do they match up? Let's say at the end of the day, boom, we do all that. We're here. We went over our carbs, and we smack dab hit our fats. And so it's like, oh shit, I'm over 25 grams of my carbs. And so what you'll do is you'll look at your dinner, check out where the primary source of carbohydrates are coming from. Well, with the example I use, it's more than likely the sweet potato that you had. And so what you'll do is you'll just push on the sweet potato. You'll adjust the amount. Let's say, let's go down to 4 ounces, which would probably drop it down to like 245 or something. Who knows? I'm just saying here. But boom, guess what? You just made an adjustment. Now you know exactly how much food you can eat in your dinner. You don't have to worry about it. All you got to do is eat the food, and you're going to hit your macros spot on, right? And so that's all from pre-tracking. And I typically do that before my dinner. So before I have dinner, because a lot of times people will eat dinner and they're like, oh shit, I like went way over my numbers. It's like you have total control of this stuff if you just pre-track, right? And so just a different strategy that you can use to help hit your macros better. The other question I got here, strategies. This is the last one. So strategies around the holidays. And so biggest thing that I would say is like around these holidays, like I'll use this week as an example. So I kind of went over this last week before. So I actually just got off a coaching call before this call with a client who obviously on Thursday had their family Thanksgiving. And so he overate. I said, no tracking on that day, man. Just enjoy yourself and we'll make it through. Well, Saturday he's having a Friendsgiving. And so same thing. This time they're going to, have more drinks and, he's going to eat a lot of food, right? And so for him, it's easy because we know where he's at numbers-wise. And so for his numbers, I just basically adjusted his protein, his carbs mainly. Like I dropped down his carbs initially at the start of the week. And so he had these, and I'll draw this out for you here, like on a graph. So let's say down here, here's your numbers. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, he hit these specific numbers. And then on Thursday, I didn't have him track. Who knows? But more than likely, he was like way up here, right? And so on Friday, today, Black Friday, no tracking again, but we're just going to be very, very intuitive about how we eat. And so today, I told him he was going to fast throughout the morning. He's going to hit a training session. If he takes in anything, it's just going to be a little bit of protein after his workout. And so the reason for just protein is on this day here, Thursday, he ate a shit ton of carbs. We already know he ate a shit ton of carbs. He loaded up on fats, plenty of protein. But either way, we are way over our specific numbers here. And so Friday, we actually dipped down a little bit, but we still eat food. Like we're not starving ourselves on Friday because we know Saturday's coming up, right? And so either way, get a good workout in. We're plenty fueled up from the day before. Take some BCAAs, a little bit of coffee, train through the session, just a little bit of protein after the session. And then I said, hold off. You're only going to have one meal that day. You're only going to need one meal, but we're going to eat intuitively. No tracking allowed. Just have a well-balanced meal at the end of the day. So a little bit of carbs, lots of protein, a little bit of fats, just to keep ourselves satisfied. We already know Saturday's coming up. We can't be eating, a crap ton on Friday again. Like we got to have a little bit of balance here. And so Saturday, we come back. He's going to be having a crazy one. And so we're going to have another spike in protein, carbs, and fats, obviously. But then on Sunday, we do the same exact thing that we did on Friday to kind of recover from the influx. And actually, when it's all played out pretty much, we're kind of leveling things out. But the fact that we already knew his intake, we already knew Thursday, Saturday, we're going to have a boost in intake overall. We strategically dropped the overall energy down, right? We didn't starve ourselves. He was still eating plentiful on these days. But coming in, he was a little bit depleted, so we had a little bit of room here. Boom. Recovery day. Have your fun here. Again, no tracking. Just go have fun. and then another recovery day. And so on Sunday, we do the same thing. Fast all through the morning. I told them to get in just a little bit of metabolic conditioning, just a little bit, like less than 10 minutes, and then like a 30 to 40-minute walk. Just be active over the course of the day. And then no meals until the very end of the day. Just a nice, easy mix of food. So eat intuitively, just fill the belly, protein, a little bit of carbs, a little bit of fat. And then Monday, since we know where we're at, Monday, we basically pick up back over here. We readjust as we need to, we connect, and then we move on forward. And that's basically how we go through the holidays. Makes it a lot easier when you know your specific quantity, when you know that, when you've been tracking. But if you don't, it's really just a crapshoot. It's like, all right, well, make sure you eat plenty of protein, cut back on your carbs, and, watch your fats. It's like you're really kind of just floating around. You don't really know, right? And so, again, my biggest piece of advice for anybody that's going to be watching this and want to really dial in on their nutrition, find out the facts. Like, get down the facts, and that is always going to be your quantity. So when we have your quantity, we can strategically set you up for this stuff and have you coming out the other end almost in a better position, because the way we strategically set it up, and I'll share this with you, is after that Thursday, like today, I chatted with my client. He was actually 2 pounds down, because coming in, we were strategically a little bit more in a deficit. And so we got this huge boost. And so if you can think about it, like, we were getting super deficient in just energy overall. So his metabolism was probably on the borderline of starting to shut down. And so, boom, we have this big influx of calories, fats, protein, sugars, all this stuff. It's like throwing fat on the fire. And so, boom, you get this huge explosion. So big surge in metabolism. It actually helps push your body forward. And so there was no surprise when he was actually a little bit of weight down, right? But I guarantee you he'll be a little bit more weight up on Sunday, which he already knows. It's all going to be water weight, because he is going to be boozing. He is going to be taking in, a wide range of, fats, carbs, proteins, all that stuff, sugary foods. But drinking on top of that, we're definitely going to have a little bit more water retention with that. So, but things that he already knows and that we deal with, right? But that's basically how we attack the holidays strategically, right? Let's see here. My man Matt, how would you recommend for us older guys as a carb source if I am feeling good, just wanting to burn some body fat? So it doesn't really matter the carb source. I would say keep it clean. What matters the most is the quantity of carbs that we're taking in. So if you're training at a high level, I'd recommend like a cleaner source, like white rice, sweet potatoes, quinoa, something of that nature. But really, it just comes down to the quantity. If you're feeling good, just wanting to burn some body fat. So yeah, if you're wanting to burn body fat, we got to get ourselves in a deficit. Carb source, keep it clean. That's what I'd say. You there, Matt? I think I saw you on
there. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. I think I'm going to start Monday and just kind of recheck all of my intake numbers.
Mm-hmm.
See if I'm just eating more than I should be right now. Kind of shifted gears in the,
Yep. That's what I'd say. What I'd say to do is, this is a perfect time after the holidays. If you haven't been tracking or, being mindful of your nutrition, just wipe the slate clean, start Monday, start tracking. Don't worry about any specific targets or anything like that. Track for a good 7 to 10, 14 days. That's going to give you a good kind of baseline check on where you're at. And then you can really start to get in and start manipulating your numbers and stuff like that. So, yeah, buddy. Cool, man. Thanks for coming on, brother.
Hey, not a problem. I'm glad I didn't miss it.
Heck yeah, dude. But yeah, those are all the questions that I had from the messages that I got. Do you got any other questions, man?
Oh, not really. Just trying to figure out how to keep, because I've been doing a lot more lifting in the off season, strength time now. So been doing that, and I'm getting way heavier than I like to stay for functionality. And I was like, I'm not really worried about looks, but I'm toting around about an extra probably 8 to 10 pounds of body fat.
Yeah.
And I was like, I got to figure out a way to burn this off. And I was like, oh, he's on. I'll hop on there and
I mean, quantity is going to be king there, like knowing how much we're taking in right now. When you're doing strength work, like obviously, and that's another thing that's a whole other topic, is like if you're wanting to get strong specifically and that's your number one goal, like understand you might gain a little bit of weight in the process, right? And so, I mean, we could still get stronger and not gain a bunch of weight, but that's when you got to be real dialed in on your nutrition. And I would say in that case, because if you think about it, if you're doing more strength work versus like metabolic conditioning and different work like that, strength work doesn't require as much glycogen. So we can go a little bit lower on the carbs, a little bit more moderate on the fats. Obviously, the proteins are going to stay in play, but that's where you kind of adjust the carbs and the fats to meet the physical demands of training, right? So if you were, competing in CrossFit or something like that, strength obviously needs to stay up there, but more so like we're going to that metabolic, arena a lot more. So we need that glycogen a little bit more with carbs. So if you're strictly like more strength training, then that's what I'd look at, is maybe lowering those carbs a little bit. But again, I don't know for sure because I don't know what your numbers are, right? So
No, the last ones that I had was when I was just basically strictly doing just CrossFit, 6 days a week and focusing on the cardio side of it more, and wasn't really worried about strength. A little situation developed, and a business partner and I kind of parted ways. So relocating the box and having to build a whole nother facility and start over again. And so it's like I'm kind of stuck in a global gym setting right now. So it's like they don't like to see me doing too many snatching and clean and jerk. And so it's kind of like, okay, well, until I get the new place up and running, we're going to shift gears and just work on strength for a few weeks. And I expected to put on some weight, but I went from about 178 pounds up to about 197. And that's too big. I don't like to get I don't like to get over, which I knew the motor was going to suffer. But you know me, I hold that higher level. So it's like, oh, well, no, I gotta bring this back down so that when it is, I don't completely obliterate. And I'm still eating the same numbers that I was doing.
That's your issue right there, is you're training differently, but you're still eating as if you were training, high level all the time. And so similar to like a lot of guys I have conversations with, they're like, well, I used to play football like 5 years ago and I'm still eating like I'm playing football. It's like, there's your problem, So, you gotta eat to meet the energy demands, right? So that's what I would do. But yeah, more than anything, just get back on track and see where you're at, give you a good idea, and then you can make proper adjustments from there.
Right now, like I said, I just had a birthday. I'm 47 now, and I'm eating like between about 178 grams of protein. I'm eating like 300 grams of carbs and about 100 grams of fat is what I was eating back when I was CrossFit every day and straight up training. And I stayed about 180 pounds. I'm totally cool with that. But then I kept eating that, and all of a sudden I'm pushing 200, and I'm like, oh my Lord! Like everybody's like, man, you look jacked, bro. I did for that gym, and I'm like, yeah, I know, but this is too big in my mind. I'm like, no, this is a lot of show. This is a vet with no transmission. That's what this is.
Awesome. Yeah, I would say proteins. You can probably up your proteins a little bit, but definitely drop those carbohydrates down a little bit. I'd say a good 25, 30 grams possibly. Keep the fats right around where they're at. See how you feel there.
Yeah, I'm just going to log, kind of see where I'm actually, because I'm a real repetitive eater. We've talked before. I'm a real repetitive. I buy the stuff. I prep on Sunday and eat it for the next week and prep on Sunday, and I'm just habit, and I'm like, I know what I'm taking in. I know, I'm right there. And so it's like, probably need to reevaluate that and see exactly where I'm at, and then kind of reevaluate.
Yeah, yeah. Cool, brother. Yeah, let me know. Post up in the group here next week and give us an update, man.
Yeah, I'll log in. I'm gonna start because I ate pretty good yesterday. We had dinner with the fam, but I only did the one plate and kept it all non-touching and ate a little bit of everything and only had one cookie. So I'm like, I'm okay. It's kind of like you. It's kind of low key and it's like, okay, I'm not crazy.
Yep.
But it's just, I feel like here lately, and I don't know, I'll ask you while I got you on here. I feel like that here lately, for some reason, I sleep better if I eat about 3 or 4 tablespoons of peanut butter before I go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not something normally that I would do, but I'm not getting sore like I was, and I'm not, I'm sleeping better. And normally I try to stay away from fats before bed and eat carbs and protein, a shake with a little bit of something.
Yeah.
But when I just was craving peanut butter one night, I ate some and I slept like a baby. And I'm like, I'm just going to try this. So I tried it for like a week and every night. And then I tried not doing it for about 3 or 4 nights and I didn't sleep as well. I didn't feel as rested when I woke up. You ever heard anything like that?
Yeah, you can actually get a little bit of an insulin boost from peanut butter. Are you just eating straight up peanut butter, putting it on anything?
No, I just eating like a spoon, just dip it in there and flatten it off and eat it, and just eat about 3 or 4 of those. And
some people it works good with, and then other people not so much. Like that fat just kind of sits in their stomach. So, but yeah, if it works for you, keep doing it, man. And it might have been a case where your fats were a little low. So adding that in, you boosted up your fats because fats are like the hormone macro, right? So like more fats that we take in. If we're deficient, if we're constantly low fat, and then we add them in, like we'll feel the benefits of that. Like literally, like within a few nights. One of those is going to be better sleep, better sex drive, all that type of stuff when you boost your fats up. So that might have been what happened when you like.
But I eat it. I like I said, I know I get those what I need to eat for those meals to get about that 100 grams, and I usually get that every single day. And sometimes when I'm tracking them, because if I know I'm going to be someplace odd or eating someplace odd, I'll log what I'm eating. And if I go over, it's usually on my fats.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things that I'm like, helps my hormones. I like the way I look. I'm good. But I been feeling good. So
Could help us sleep, man.
Like I never heard anything like that, so it was like, okay, well.
Yeah, like I said, some people do that. They kind of fat load before sleep, but some other people they just can't do it. Like I am not. Anytime I have a lot of fat at night, it just kind of sits in my gut, and I'm just like, bleh. So,
yeah, it's kind of the way I feel.
We go out to like a steakhouse. We go to a real nice steakhouse, and like everything's cooked in butter. And just a lot of fat intake, like oils and stuff like that. Like I will sleep horrible that night because it's just sitting in my stomach, So, but yeah, man, use what works best for you. That'll help.
Yep.
So, but yeah, brother, I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on. Happy Thanksgiving to you, man.
You too, brother.
Yeah. Have you heard anything about what they're going to do with the age qualifiers? They're going to keep that.
No, I haven't heard anything that's not already out there. I haven't. We were actually talking about it in one of the judges groups the other night that they were like, I wonder if they're going to do, thing that they haven't put out. But you know how Dave is. He likes to.
Oh yeah. I imagine they wouldn't touch because I mean, if you think about it. From a money standpoint, it didn't cost money for them to run the online qualifiers. If anything, it makes them money because, shoot, when I made it, I had to pay a pretty hefty registration fee. I mean, they're not making money off the Masters, but, I mean, I don't think they're losing money either, So.
No, exactly. I don't think they'll change that because it's kind of already at that format. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Already at that. But I'm interested to see I mean, because if you're going to run it that way, to me, it looks like you're going to have to make sure that every one of your events that you sponsor has a master's division.
Yep.
For every age division.
Yep.
And then, you know, judging, I mean, you think about that's going to put that's going to be an insane amount of people that us as judges on day 1 and 2. What are we going to do?
How are they going to have that? They're going to have so they're going to have what? How many athletes make it this coming year?
Well, I think right at the last number was like 12 or 15 different qualification,
Then, one athlete from each country on top of that, right?
Yeah, one athlete from each country that has an affiliated box in the male, and then one athlete from the female, and then you have to have teens, and then every age division in teens, and then you know what I mean. You're going to have the workouts are going to have to be 4 minutes or less if you're going to get them all done. You know what I mean? It's just. I'm just like, I don't even know this judging nightmare that's about to happen.
Yeah.
I was like,
that's something that nobody thinks about too, you know? Like when I was at the games, I was just like in awe because I've ran like competitions and stuff like that at my gym. And I mean, so many different moving parts. It was like the setup in between workouts and, you know, how many people are going to judge and, you know, all the volunteers.
Barbells in and out. Yeah.
It's crazy. Just in the Masters Pavilion alone, like where, you know, it wasn't even that crazy busy over there, but just like behind the scenes, all the barbells, all the plates, all the dumbbells, all the kettlebells that weren't even used, you know, they're just there for like warm-up areas. Like they had more equipment in some of the warm-up areas than I have in my gym. It was like
exactly. I take pictures of that stuff because I'm like, oh, this is like dream come true.
Like a world-class gym.
I love to have this as a box, you know what I mean? The warm-up area. Better than box in the world. Yeah.
It was pretty awesome. So
it was, it's crazy.
I hope to see you back this next year.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'll be there, Lord willing, unless I'm in the other big box in the sky. I'll be there, as always.
Well, good stuff, man. Thanks again for coming on. I got to run. I got another coaching call coming up here at 2:00, so I really appreciate it, man.
You gonna hit any comps to qualify, or which ones you picking to go?
I haven't picked any yet. I'm guessing they're gonna have the online qualifiers again. So I don't know, man. With the new baby and all that stuff, I don't have time to travel anywhere. I was asked to do a competition a couple weeks ago. And the team that asked me, they actually won the competition, which I was like, I wish I would have went, but I'm so busy, man. I don't have any time to do any travel.
The life of the owner.
Yeah, man. So, but cool, brother. It's good chatting with you and catching up.
Yeah, man. It's good seeing you again.
Yeah. Awesome, brother. I'll see you later, man.